Hi and welcome. I'm Sarah Vavra from Sarah Vavra Wellness and Bodywork, and I'm really glad that you've joined me today. I want to offer you a little um, yoga stretching routine that can help you if you have particularly tight hips and groin area. And we're going to be targeting the TFL, the tensor fascia lata muscle, which is a short little muscle high up in the hip that can cause a lot of problems for your back and your glutes and the front of your body. And so many of these yoga type exercises are going to be designed to help either loosen this area up or also target some of the other areas that might be affected. So listen to your body. Don't do anything that doesn't feel comfortable for you today. And I hope you enjoy this. All right, we're going to come to all fours, knees under hips and wrists under shoulders. And if you need to put a blanket or fold your mat over, you can always do that. So we just want to have that nice long all fours position, and we're slowly going to warm up the hips by dropping the hips over to the left and over to the right. And we're just noticing where our range of motion is with this stretch. So from one side to the other, dropping them over, pausing for a moment, feeling the sensations, and dropping them over to the other side. And you can take as much time with this as you want when you're doing this on your own. And just make sure your breathing is nice and even, nice and relaxed. Good. All right, now bring the hips over to the right-hand side of your mat, and then keeping them over there, you're going to start to press your hips back as if you're aiming towards the back corner of your mat. Walking your hands along with you if you want, and letting them drop down. Now just be mindful that this might bother your knees a little bit, so if you feel any torquing in your knees, then don't do this. Right? So stretching back until you feel a good sensation, feels like it's important. And then we're going to walk the hands and the body back up, drop the hips over to the left side, and the same thing, start to press back, working the hips back, working the hips back. And just finding that sweet spot where you feel that resistance and a stretch and breathing. Less is always more with this, right? You can find that little place where you feel that first stretch and then hold that. And as you breathe and relax into it, your body should start to let you know that it feels it. And then come back to center. We're coming back to all fours, and we're just going to wave our tail from side to side. Now walk your hands forward a little bit more so they're in front of your shoulders, and let your weight drop into your pelvis a little bit from side to side. Dropping them over. Saying hello to your puppy. Hello, puppy. Letting your pelvis drop down. It's what happens in nature, right? Dropping down. And letting them come forward. So I'm coming forward, dropping my pelvis down and releasing and letting the hips sink into the ground. Taking it over to the other side, and I'm letting the hip drop down to the other side. Now this might be more on your wrist and your upper body than you like, so you might come down to your elbows, and again, dropping the hips over to the side. So if you can see it, I'm just getting this little bit of a movement from side to side. Dropping over and dropping over. Good. And then we're going to come all the way down and bring your pelvis all the way down to the ground. You want to feel that nice pressure on your pelvis as you press down. Engage the glutes a little bit. You shouldn't feel any tightness in your lower back. If you do, bring your body down even further. You take your legs out wide and bend your knees and just let your feet go from side to side. You can put your head down. It's this nice windshield wiper leg position. Back and forth, back and forth. And you can just hold it in one direction and hold it in the other direction. And then release. And legs are out. We're going to take our hands under our shoulders, push up, And press back into child's. Come forward. Let the pelvis come forward and back. We're just opening up that front of the body and the back. Good. And then from here, press up and back, find your down dog, and walk your feet to the top of the mat. And come all the way up to standing. Roll your shoulders back and find that tall position. All right, so the next part of this, to continue to open up in that tensor fascia lata hip area, is to move into a warrior one position. So with our feet at the top of the mat, we're gonna step the right leg back and turn the heel in slightly, right? And so from here, we're gonna bend the front knee and keep that back leg, that right leg straight. We wanna keep our feet on the ground. So we're gonna just bend and straighten a couple of times. And one of the things we wanna do here is to make sure that we have tucked our tailbone under, and that's gonna help open up all across this crease. So what you wanna feel is that sense of being able to curl your tailbone under as opposed to letting your butt stick out. Curl the tailbone under and come forward. So as you saw, I have a dog, and when you take the dog or a cat to the doctor, the vet, and they take their temperature, what do they do with their bottom, right? They tuck their tailbone under, and that's the sensation that you want to have, that tucking under. Good. And so from here, we're just going to hold this position with the knee bent and the back leg straight, and you might reach your arms up, you might hold on to your wrist and give yourself a nice stretch over, breathing, noticing, and then coming back to center. And then hands are still at your hips. And think about your hips heading forward as if in front of you is 12 o'clock on the clock face, okay? We're gonna turn just the hips more towards 1 and notice what that feels like. And more towards 2 and notice what that feels like. And then back to 1 and 12. And now getting more into that tensor fascia lata, we're gonna turn those hip bones like we're driving, I don't know, a car, right? Like we're turning that steering wheel more towards 11 o'clock, right? And then you can add your chest and again, add that lifting up and stretching. And then slowly come back to center. Now, for you, you might find that it works better if you even take that leg behind you a little bit more, and that can deepen that stretch for your body. So listen to what feels right for you. Then we're gonna do the same thing with the other leg. So stepping forward, you might feel like, whew, that feels kind of funny. Allergy season, right? So I'm sniffing. Same thing other side. You bend the front knee and straighten. You want to keep that foot anchored to the ground, and hips are moving, generally speaking, forward. So bend and straighten. Get that hip tucked, tailbone goes under, bending and straightening. Bending and straightening. Several times. Noticing your balance. And breathing. See if you can reach your arms up. Maybe give yourself this nice side stretch. Woo. Using this as an opportunity to breathe deeply. And then releasing, coming up. And then again, think about hips are moving towards 12 o'clock. And then we're going to turn, in my case, towards 11 o'clock. And more towards 10 o'clock. And then back to 11 and 12. And now I'm going to try, without forcing, to rotate my hip bones towards the 1 o'clock position. When I get to where it feels like I've got something going on, I might take my arms up and give myself that nice stretch. Now you may or may not feel this in the tensor fascia lata area. Kind of depends on where your tightness is in your body. And then release down. Good. Very good. And then we're going to shift our weight forward and step forward. All right. So the body likes hip circles. We're going to do some hip circles around and around. The body likes all kinds of circles, not just hip circles. So just kind of circling around and releasing any tension that we might feel. And then we're going to bend that left knee and straighten the right leg and stick the hip out to the side and breathe. Both feet are flat on the ground. And then come back up. Bend the right knee, straighten the left leg, and let your hip go a little bit to the left. And you can vary the sensation in this depending on leaning your body back or leaning your body forward. So we'll do that again. Take your hips over to the right, bend that left knee, and tilt your body forward, the front of your body, torso forward, and notice where you feel that stretch. And then start to bring your chest back up and lean back slightly. And I can feel that stretch come all the way up into that hip and across. And then come back to standing. And we'll do the same thing in the other direction. So we're bending one knee, sticking that hip out, tilting forward slightly, noticing where we feel the sensations, and making sure to breathe. And then coming up or even tilting back a little bit and starting to bring that stretch more into the lateral part of the body and maybe even a little bit of the anterior or front. And then come back to center. Give yourself a tiny little bit of a back bend, pressing the pelvis forward and rolling the shoulders back, firming your glutes. Good. And stand up and come all the way down to the ground. So we're going to bring our hands down and our feet down, and we're going to come into a kneeling lunge position. So take your right leg back and let your knee rest on the ground and step your left foot forward. And this is very similar to the Warrior One position, but we're really now focusing on getting more of those quads, hip flexors, as well as psoas, iliacus, tensor fascia lata, the other muscles that kind of bother our front of our body. So again, curl that tailbone under. Think about lifting the pelvis up and letting your tailbone drop down. And we're going to just ease into this, stretching forward a little bit and back. Now, if your balance feels funny when you're in this position or it bothers your knee, you could put a pillow under your knee, and you can also take your hands down to the ground and stretch forward and backwards here. If you're able to be in this balancing position, find this position here. And then we're going to start to turn our bodies towards the leg that's on top. And as we turn our body, so we're turning our upper body towards the left leg, just think about the front of that hip bone as if that hip bone also wants to kiss the inside of your thigh. So we're starting to get a little bit of this sense of rotation with the right hip bone wanting to kiss the inside of that left thigh. Bend the left knee a little bit more if you have that space. And this is a good place to be right here. You might be able to reach down, bend the elbow, right? And come into that nice twisting low prayer lunge position. Deepening that stretch. And we want to take a lot of time. So think about the front of the right hip coming forward and twisting just a little bit to the left. All interesting sensations. And then we're going to support ourselves, coming out more slowly than we came into it. Coming back to center. Bring your hands down to the ground here if you can. Right? And then tuck your toes under on that right side and extend the leg. And see if you can just rock forward and backwards a couple of times. And then hold this position, reaching through the right heel. And think about the right thigh, the top of the right thigh, becoming more and more parallel to the ground. Bring the knee back down. and starting to open up the inside of that left thigh. We're going to roll over onto the pinky toe side of that left foot as best you can. Staying here, or maybe bringing your elbows down and breathing. Lengthen the back of your neck. Think about your crown of your head moving forward. And breathe. Really great work. You're doing wonderfully. All right, making your way back up. We're going to stretch back. All right, and if you're able to, you're going to sit down on your heel or maybe come all the way down to the ground and then take the left leg and cross it up and over. Okay? And pull your body forward, just a nice little fold here. And then release and uncross, swing your legs around, and we're going to do the same thing on the other side, right? So this time our left leg is back and our right leg is forward. So bring that leg forward, coming into that lunge position and noticing what that lunge feels like for you. Coming up if you have the balance, and then once again, tilt the pelvis. And if you tilt the pelvis, you should immediately feel more of a stretch in the front of that left thigh. We're going to sink forward, just warming that up, saying hello. And then holding that for a little bit. And you can also bring those arms up. Right, nice big stretch. Stretch with a little bit of a side bend. Okay. And then release, and then we're going to take that left hand here to the outside and gently start to rotate. So this time we're thinking about the front of the left hip bone, starting to want to come towards the inside of the thigh. Think about it almost like a little arcing motion, wanting to turn, trying to keep that right knee in line with the ankle, and dropping more deeply into that lunge. So energetically, the front of the left thigh is moving forward. And then continuing to deepen this by dropping down into the hip and maybe coming into those prayer hands twisting here. And it's really worth holding these positions for a longer period of time, particularly if you're a person who sits a lot or runs or cycles, because the front of your hip and probably your hip flexor, the tensor fasciae lata, the TFL, are probably very, very tight. I'm just guessing. But I know you, and I know you stretch the things that feel good and not the things that don't, because I'm the same way. So hands come to the inside now. We're going to drop the knee out wide to the side. And breathe, and just allow yourself to receive the sensations that you feel, making sure you're not in a pain place, but you're in a place that feels like it's effective, that it's what you need. You might bring your elbows down. Relaxing everything that feels like it needs to relax. If you're adding extra tension into your body, try to let that go. And then start to make your way up, right? And then we're going to stretch back. Good. And maybe sit on your heel, but if you can't sit on your heel, sit all the way down on the bottom. So if I were sitting on my heel, it'd be more like this, or move your foot to the side. And then sitting up nice and tall, and hinge from your hips. So let's say your legs don't cross like this at all, and this is a ridiculous notion. You can simply come into simple seated position and fold forward, or legs out and fold forward. Just find a nice hinging kind of position that works for you. All right. And then we're going to release and bring the bottoms of your feet together and stretch them out pretty wide. So you've made this really big diamond position. And hands are behind us. So we're just letting us feel like this, what's happening in our legs. Just kind of noticing. And then sitting up tall, and we're going to come forward and release. I'm going to take nice, slow, deep breaths here. Particularly if this is a practice that you're doing at the end of the day, make sure that you take extra time. And then coming up, we're going to walk the feet in a little bit closer. Let the knees drop down and come forward. Opening up the inner thighs and coming forward, just letting the weight of the body drop forward. Not worrying about hinging too much right now. We're just enjoying the stretch. And then sitting up and then bringing the heels in even closer. Sometimes it helps to have a like a bolster or a pillow or a block underneath your hips. That helps to open things up a little bit better. But we're just going to enjoy this nice wherever we are kind of situation. Sitting up nice and tall, inhale. Exhale, press the back of your thighs down towards the ground. Inhale, grow tall. Exhale, pressing out. And if you want, here we're hinging forward, pulling ourselves forward through the legs and breathing. This is the area that we're just opening up the inside of our thighs. You might even feel a stretch in the back of your hips. And then release. And bring the knees in. All right, we're going to come all the way down to the ground. And I'm going to move my mat so I can show you a little bit better how to do this. We come all the way down to the ground to your back. And separate your feet hip width apart and lengthen your low back. Relax those shoulders. And take both of your knees and let them go over to the right-hand side. And then take your foot and rest it on the outside of that left knee. And we're just letting the weight of that foot and that ankle on the outside of the left leg give our body an extra little stretch, and we're getting that wonderful stretch here in that tensor fascia lata. See if you can keep your left shoulder down and simply breathe. And then come back to center and uncross and do the same thing on the other side, dropping both knees over and resting the ankle on the outside of that leg. And breathe. And anchor the right shoulder blade down. And then release and come back to center. And bring both knees into your chest and give your legs a nice hug. Circle the knees around. And release the legs down one at a time. And reach the arms overhead. Take a big breath in. And exhale. And come into your Shavasana.